This is the Bender history for the Bender family in the state and colony of North Carolina. The oldest home associated with the family is pictured before you. It was a plantation plains built in 1868, shortly after the Civil War. I'm Dr. William Bender doing in my time in the late 1960s. There was an older home just behind this, which in my lifetime was referred to as a kitchen house. It may have been the original Bender home. We're at the Bender plantation on Mill Creek, just off the Trent River. And from as early as the 1740s, Martin Bender owned much of this land. He was the first Bender in North Carolina, having come over with de Graffenried and settled in the colony, the city of New Bern, and the colony of North Carolina in 1710. Behind that Bender plantation home is a large field, still belongs to some of the Bender descendants. And in the middle of that field, you can see before you a rise in the ground that for decades, at least 100 years, has been a Bender family graveyard. My father, who was born in 1925, remembers many, many wooden markers out here. He remembers 40 or 50 graves. Today, only the stone markers exist in this little thicket of brush and grass. It is a rise in the Bender plantation field, approximately a quarter of a mile behind the plantation house you just saw. We believe that Martin Bender and his son John might be buried here, but we have no evidence of that. We do know that Martin purchased this land in 1740. Hi, I'm Dr. William Bender. I'm documenting the Bender family in North Carolina. I've already mentioned Martin Bender, who owned this land from the year of 1740 on when he purchased it from his father-in-law. There are 3 generations of Benders, we believe, that we cannot find a grave for. Martin Bender was the first to come to the Carolina colony, came over with the Swiss and Germans to settle New Bern. He had a son, John Bender, Sr., who was an American Revolutionary War soldier. We have found records for his involvement from Craven County, North Carolina, in the American Revolution. His son John was born, and those are the 3 early Benders that we cannot find graves for. It's possible they're buried here at the Bender plantation, but we do not know. The second John Bender, who would have been John Bender Jr., had a son, John Knox Bender. We do have his grave. It's right here at the Bender plantation. This is John Knox Bender. He and his wife lived at the plantation. Over here next to him is his wife, Emmeline. These 2 graves are 2 of the oldest graves that we can find, and they would have been 4th generation North Carolinians. This is the grave of Brian Bender. He lived until 1883, and it was his family that is well known and well remembered among the Benders that now live in and around Pollocksville and New Bern, North Carolina. His wife is buried next to him. You can see the grave marker down in the grass over there. That was Miss Lucy Tolson, and she lived well into the early 1900s. But Brian Bender is a family member that there were living memories of when I compiled the Bender family history as late as 2006. I should mention that one of Martin's children, Daniel Bender, moved up around Nashville, Tennessee in the late 1800s. And there is a Rutland church on the road between Leesville and Mount Juliet in Tennessee that they were known to have attended and were buried in that graveyard. Today that church is still active, but the Benders in that area are of African American descent, and there are no white Benders in the area around Nashville, Tennessee that I've been able to contact. But for the Pollocksville and New Bern crowd, Brian Bender here was one of the key figures from which many of us descended. Cemetery is beautiful here in Pollocksville. It's right by the Trent River, a gorgeous area. One of the Benders that we need to talk about was Brian Bender's son. He was a Bender that's direct in my personal lineage, and this is his grave. His name is Wade Bender. He was born in the late 1800s. Grave says 1877 there. Died in 1936. This was my this was my great-grandfather, one great there. His wife is Ms. Annie Taylor. My dad, who was born in 1925, my dad's a World War II GI Bill guy. He remembers both of these, his grandparents. This is the next grave in the lineage. This is John H. Bender. He was John Bender Sr. He was Wade Bender's son. He is buried in the Bender Cemetery, a Bender plot that he purchased. And he's buried next to his wife, Mildred Carmichael Bender. She lived well into my lifetime, passing away in 1992. On the other side of Bender Sr. is a grave of my mother. It's Helen Inez Bender. And beyond her is where my dad will eventually be buried once he passes away. He's very crotchety 85, a joy to be around every Christmas. My dad makes the 8th generation of Benders since Martin Bender. And I personally, William Bender, am the 9th generation. My son, Joseph William Bender, Willie, is the 10th generation of Benders. Again, documentation of what I've put on this video is available in 10 generations of the Bender family in North Carolina. It's a booklet I did for my son on his 18th birthday. It is available free online at the website currahebooks.com, CurraheeBooks.com. There you will find 2 novels that address their historic fiction, but they address the Bender family in North Carolina. The first one's already available. It's titled New Bern, 1710 in the Carolinas. The second one will be out in the year 2011. The title is tentatively The Bender Legacy, Civil War in the North Carolina. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope it's helpful to you. And again, the actual history of the 10 generations of Bender family is available free in this booklet.